The Mafia boss came for my brother's debt, but took me instead. Before we dive into the story, tell me where in the world you're watching from, and if this story steals your heart, please hit subscribe. The salt air off the Tyrrhenian Sea usually brought Emma Reed a sense of peace, a reminder that the world was vast and her problems were small. But tonight the wind battered the shutters of her crumbling ancestral home with the malice of a living thing. She stood in the center of the kitchen, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the worn pine table, her gaze fixed on the front door. Leo was not coming back. The realization had settled in her chest like a stone dropped into a deep well, heavy and cold. Her brother had taken the money, 50,000 euros borrowed from men who did not sign contracts with ink but with blood, and he had vanished into the humid Italian night, leaving her to answer for his sins. The silence of the house was not empty. It was heavy with anticipation, the sort of quiet that precedes the strike of lightning. When the knock finally came, it was not the thunderous pounding she had expected from thugs sent to break kneecaps. It was 3 distinct, firm raps, controlled and authoritative. Emma smoothed the front of her simple white blouse, her fingers trembling against the fabric, and forced her legs to move. She had prepared a speech, a desperate plea for time, a promise to sell the bakery equipment, anything to stall the inevitable violence. She unlocked the heavy oak door and pulled it open, the rusted hinges groaning in protest. The man standing on her porch was not a thug. He was a monolith of darkness cut from the night itself, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit so sharply tailored it looked as though it had been stitched onto his body. Lorenzo De Luca stared down at her, his eyes the color of steel forged in a winter fire. He did not speak immediately, letting the weight of his presence suffocate the air between them. Behind him, a sleek black sedan idled quietly, a beast purring in the driveway where her brother's rusted bicycle usually leaned. Lorenzo stepped into the light of the entryway, and Emma instinctively retreated, the smell of expensive cologne and rain washing over her. He was terrifyingly handsome, his jaw strong and shadowed by the faint trace of stubble, his dark hair slicked back severe and neat. He looked around the small, peeling foyer with a look of detached analysis, like an appraiser deciding if a building was worth the demolition cost. "Leo Reed is not here," Lorenzo said. It was not a question. His voice was a deep baritone that vibrated through the floorboards, smooth as velvet wrapped around a blade. He is working late," Emma lied, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her instantly. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to make her body smaller, less of a target. "He told me he would be back by midnight. If you come back tomorrow, I am sure he will have the money." Lorenzo turned his gaze back to her, and Emma felt stripped bare. He took a slow step forward, forcing her to back up until her hips hit the hallway table. He reached out, not to strike her, but to pick up a framed photograph of her and Leo from the table. He studied it for a moment before placing it face down with a deliberate, soft click. "Do not lie to me, Emma," he said softly, using her name with a familiarity that made her skin prickle. "Your brother took a train to Rome 3 hours ago. He has turned off his phone. He has thrown away his SIM card. He is not working late. He is running." The air left Emma's lungs. She knew it, but hearing it spoken aloud by this man made it a tombstone over her life. She slumped slightly, the fight draining out of her. "I don't have the money," she whispered, looking down at her worn jeans and the scuffed floor. "The bakery, it barely breaks even. This house is mortgaged to the hilt. There is nothing here for you to take." Lorenzo moved closer, invading her personal space until she was forced to look up at him. He radiated a heat that was intoxicating and terrifying. He looked at her hands, rough from kneading dough, and then up to her eyes, green and wide with fear. He saw the fire there, buried under the panic, the refusal to completely break even when the world was ending. It intrigued him. He had come here expecting to break a man, or perhaps to burn a house as a message. Instead, he found a woman who stood amidst the ruins of her life with a spine of steel. "The debt must be paid," Lorenzo said, his eyes locking onto hers. "That is the first rule of my world. If the debtor cannot pay, the guarantor must." "I never signed anything," Emma protested, her voice rising with a sudden spark of anger. "I am not his guarantor." "You are his blood," Lorenzo countered, his face impassive. In Italy, that is a binding contract stronger than any banknote. He paused, his gaze dropping to her lips for a fraction of a second before returning to her eyes. You say there is nothing of value here. I disagree. Emma's breath hitched. What do you want? Lorenzo stepped back, buttoning his suit jacket with a casual grace that belied the tension in the room. You will come with me. You will stay in my home until your brother returns to settle his debt. If he returns, you walk free. If he does not, well, we will negotiate the terms of your service. You're kidnapping me, she gasped, horror flooding her veins. I am collecting collateral, Lorenzo corrected coldly. He gestured toward the open door. You can scream if you wish. You can call the police, who are on my payroll. Or you can walk out that door with your dignity intact and pray your brother loves you enough to come back. You have 5 minutes to pack a bag. The drive to the Villa de Luca was a blur of shadows and silence. Emma sat in the back of the armored SUV, the leather seat cool against her palms. Lorenz sat beside her, typing on a phone, seemingly ignoring her existence, yet she felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. When the car finally slowed, passing through massive iron gates flanked by security cameras, Emma saw her prison. It was a palace of white stone and glass, perched on the cliffs overlooking the sea, bathed in the golden glow of floodlights. It was beautiful, opulent, and utterly isolating. Inside, the villa was a cavern of marble and modern art. It lacked the warmth of a home. It felt like a museum or a fortress. Lorenzo dismissed his guards with a subtle wave of his hand and turned to Emma. This is not a dungeon, Emma. You are free to move through the house and the gardens. You will eat with me. You will not leave the grounds. If you try to run, my men will find you, and I will be less hospitable the second time. For the first week, Emma lived in a state of suspended animation. She had been given a guest suite larger than the entire ground floor of her own house, filled with silk sheets and clothes that fit her perfectly, a detail that unsettled her more than if they had been ill-fitting. She avoided Lorenzo as much as possible, eating her breakfast in the kitchen with the staff, who treated her with a pitying kindness. But dinner was mandatory. Every evening at 8, she sat across from him at a long mahogany table. The conversations were sparse. He asked about her day. She gave monosyllabic answers. But by the second week, the silence began to fracture. You hate it here, Lorenzo said one evening, swirling a glass of deep red Chianti. He was watching her cut her steak with aggressive precision. I am a prisoner, Emma replied, meeting his gaze. A bird in a golden cage is still in a cage, Lorenzo. Do not expect me to sing for you. A faint smile touched his lips, the first she had ever seen. It transformed his face, softening the hard lines of his ruthlessness. I do not like songbirds, he murmured. I prefer things with claws. Is that why you haven't touched me? Emma asked, the question tumbling out before she could stop it. Because you are waiting for me to scratch. Lorenzo placed his glass down slowly. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with a sudden, electric tension. I haven't touched you, Emma, because I am not a savage, and because when I touch you, it will not be because you are a debt to be paid. It will be because you want it. Emma flushed, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to deny it, to throw his arrogance back in his face, but the way he looked at her, dark, hungry, and possessive, stirred something deep within her. It was a dangerous heat, a betrayal of her own survival instincts. The dynamic shifted 2 nights later. Lorenzo was hosting a small gathering of associates, men in expensive suits with eyes like sharks. He had ordered Emma to attend, buying her a dress of emerald green silk that clung to her curves like a second skin. She stood by his side, feeling like a trophy, hatting the way the other men looked at her. One of the associates, a man named Baron with oily skin and a leering grin, cornered her near the terrace doors while Lorenzo was speaking to someone else. So this is the little baker, Baron sneered, his hand reaching out to finger the strap of her dress. Lorenzo has expensive tastes for a man collecting bad debts. Maybe when he is done with you, I can take over the lease. Emma slapped his hand away, her eyes flashing. Touch me again and you will lose the hand. Baron laughed, grabbing her wrist, his grip bruising. Feisty, I like that. Before Emma could scream, a shadow fell over them. Lorenzo was there. He did not shout. He did not make a scene. He simply reached out, grabbed Baron by the back of the neck, and slammed his face into the stone pillar of the archway. The sound of crunching cartilage echoed through the sudden silence of the room. Baron slumped to the floor, groaning, blood pouring from his nose. Lorenzo straightened his cuffs, looking down at the man with cold indifference. "You touch what is mine," Lorenzo said, his voice quiet enough that only those nearby could hear, yet projected with lethal clarity, "and you forfeit your life. Get him out of here." He turned to Emma. She was trembling, shock radiating through her. He reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek, then gently brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers were warm, steady, and devoid of the violence he had just displayed. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No," she whispered, looking up at him with wide eyes. She saw the monster then, the violence he kept on a leash, but she also saw the shield. He had broken a man for her. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. The incident with Baron changed the atmosphere in the villa. The fear Emma felt toward Lorenzo began to mutate into a complex curiosity. He was a man of violence, yes, but he operated by a code she was beginning to understand. He was not cruel for the sake of cruelty. He was a king protecting his kingdom, and strangely, she had become part of that territory. She began to explore the villa with more confidence. One rainy afternoon, she found a locked door on the third floor. The lock was old, and Emma, having grown up in a house where keys were often lost and locks picked with hairpins, managed to open it. Inside, it wasn't a torture chamber or a vault of stolen money. It was a studio. Drafting tables lined the walls, covered in blueprints of cathedrals, modern museums, and bridges. Sketches of charcoal and graphite lay scattered, depicting soaring arches and delicate flying buttresses. It was the work of an artist, an architect of immense talent. "I wanted to build things," a voice said from the doorway. Emma jumped, dropping the sketch she was holding. Lorenzo stood there, leaning against the doorframe. He had discarded his jacket and tie, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. He looked tired, the weight of his empire pressing down on his shoulders. "You drew these?" Emma asked, gesturing to the room. "A long time ago," Lorenzo said, walking into the room and running a hand over a dusty drafting table. "Before my father died, before I became the head of the family. The De Lucas do not build, we own those who build. But I always loved the structure of things, the way tension holds a building up." "Like you," Emma said softly, "you hold everything up with tension." Lorenzo looked at her, his gray eyes guarded. "If I let go, the roof collapses. That is the burden." "Why did you keep them?" she asked. "To remember who I am not," he replied enigmatically. He moved to the window, watching the rain lash against the glass. "Why did you stay in that house, Emma? The one with the rot and the leaking roof. You could have sold it years ago, moved to the city, started a bakery where people actually buy bread." Emma moved to stand beside him, the distance between them shrinking. "It was my mother's house. She loved the roses in the garden, after they died, and after Leo started getting into trouble. It was the only thing that felt like us. I thought if I kept the walls standing, I could keep the family from falling apart." "We are the same," Lorenzo said, turning to face her. "We both sacrifice ourselves for ghosts." The vulnerability in his voice shattered the last of her defenses. He was not just the Mafia boss. He was a man who had buried his dreams to carry a legacy he never asked for. Emma reached out, her hand tentatively touching the scar on his jaw. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing for a moment, savoring the warmth. "I don't hate you anymore," Emma whispered. Lorenzo opened his eyes, the steel gone, replaced by a dark, swirling ocean of desire. "That is dangerous, Emma. Hate is safer." "I don't want safe," she breathed. Lorenzo caught her hand, kissing her palm, his lips lingering against her skin. Then he pulled her to him, his other hand tangling in her auburn hair. The kiss was not tentative. It was a collision. It was the storm outside crashing against the cliffs. It tasted of rain and suppressed longing, a desperate claiming that had nothing to do with debt and everything to do with two broken souls finding the matching jagged edges in each other. For the first time since she arrived, Emma did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like she had finally come home. The bubble of their intimacy was fragile, and the world outside was armed with needles. 3 weeks into her captivity, which had now become a passionate, secret affair, reality crashed the gates. Lorenzo was in his study, the door open, when Emma walked in carrying a tray of coffee. He was on the phone, his back rigid, his voice low and lethal. He slammed the receiver down so hard the plastic cracked. "What is it?" Emma asked, setting the tray down, fear clutching her heart. Lorenzo turned to her, his face a mask of fury. "Your brother." Emma's hands shook. "Did you find him?" "He found the Mortys," Lorenzo spat. "He is in Naples. He didn't just run, Emma. He went to my enemies. He is selling them the layout of my shipping routes in exchange for protection from me." Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "He wouldn't. That gets people killed." "It gets me killed," Lorenzo said, walking around the desk. He stopped in front of her, gripping her shoulders. "The Mortys know you are here. They know I have kept you. They know that I have not treated you as a hostage should be treated." "What does that mean?" "It means you are a target. They will come for you to get to me. Leo has made you a pawn in a game he does not understand." Lorenzo moved immediately into action. He opened a safe behind a painting, pulling out a stack of cash and a passport. He shoved them into her hands. "You are leaving, tonight. I have a plane waiting at a private airstrip. It will take you to London. You have enough money to start over." Emma stared at the money, then at him. "You're letting me go." "I am saving your life," Lorenzo said, his voice ragged. "I cannot protect you here. If the Mortys attack, the villa will be a war zone. I will not watch you die for my wars." "I'm not leaving you," Emma said, throwing the money onto the desk. "You must," Lorenzo growled, shaking her. "Do you not understand? They will kill you to hurt me." "And if I leave, who watches your back?" Emma cried, tears stinging her eyes. "You said we are the same. You protect the ghosts. Let me protect the living." Before Lorenzo could argue, the alarm system shrieked, a high-pitched wail that signaled a perimeter breach. The lights in the villa cut out, plunging them into darkness. "They're here," Lorenzo whispered, pulling a gun from his holster. He pushed Emma behind him. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say." The glass of the study window shattered as bullets tore through the room. Lorenzo fired back, the muzzle flash illuminating his face, grim, determined, and terrifying. He dragged Emma to the floor, crawling toward the heavy oak door. The hallway was filled with smoke and the sound of shouting. They fought their way to the garage, Lorenzo moving with a tactical precision that saved them twice from gunmen rounding the corners. But as they reached the armored car, a bullet grazed Lorenzo's arm. He grunted, stumbling but not falling. He shoved Emma into the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel, gunning the engine. They burst through the garage doors, the car taking impacts as they sped down the driveway. Lorenzo drove with one hand, his other clutching his bleeding arm. "Lorenzo!" Emma screamed as he swerved to avoid an incoming truck blocking the gate. He rammed the side of the truck, the armored SUV shuddering but breaking through. They sped onto the coastal road, leaving the burning villa behind. Lorenzo looked over at her, his face pale, blood soaking his white shirt. "I told you to leave," he wheezed. "Shut up and drive," Emma said, tearing a strip from her dress to bind his wound. She looked at him, her heart breaking and swelling all at once. There was no going back to the bakery now. She was in the fire with him, and she would burn before she let him go. They took refuge in a safe house, a small, nondescript apartment in the heart of Naples' old quarter. Lorenzo was feverish from the wound, but he refused a hospital. Emma stitched him up herself, her hands steady despite the chaos, tending to him with a fierce tenderness that humbled him. For 2 days, Lorenzo worked the phones, his voice growing raspier but his commands no less absolute. He was calling in every favor, mobilizing every loyal soldier. He was not just defending, he was preparing a slaughter. "They have Leo," Lorenzo told her on the 3rd morning. He was checking the magazine of his pistol. "The Mortys, they are holding him at the old shipyard. They want to trade your brother for my territory, and you. They want me. They think if they have you, they own me, Lorenzo said. He walked over to her, cupping her face. They are right. What are we going to do? We are going to end it. The shipyard was a graveyard of rusted metal and sea rot. The fog rolled in off the water, obscuring the cranes that loomed like skeletal giants. Lorenzo walked into the open space, Emma a few paces behind him as instructed, though he hated exposing her. But the Mortys had demanded to see her. Leo was on his knees in the center of the clearing, beaten and bloody. Behind him stood Sila's Morty, an old man with eyes like a vulture, flanked by 10 armed men. Lorenzo, Morty smiled, his teeth yellow. You brought the girl. Good. The boy here says she makes excellent bread. Maybe she can cook for my men. Let the boy go, Silas, Lorenzo said, his voice carrying over the wind. He is nothing, a gambler, a waste of space. He is family, Morty taunted. But then, you know all about family, don't you? You killed your own uncle to take the throne. I killed a traitor, Lorenzo corrected, just as I am about to kill you. Morty laughed. You are outnumbered, boy, 10-1. Give me the girl and the deed to the ports, and I might let you limp away. Lorenzo looked at Emma. He gave her a microscopic nod. It was the signal. I don't think so, Lorenzo said. He raised his hand. From the shadows of the shipping containers, red laser dots appeared on the chests of Morty's men. Snipers. Lorenzo hadn't come alone. He had brought the entire legion. Checkmate, Lorenzo whispered. Gunfire erupted. It was brief and brutal. Morty's men fell before they could raise their rifles. Lorenzo moved with blinding speed, not retreating but advancing. He shot Morty in the leg, dropping the old man to the scream-filled concrete. Leo scrambled away, cowering behind a crate. Emma ran to him, checking him for wounds, but her eyes were on Lorenzo. He stood over Morty, the smoking gun in his hand. He looked at the rival boss, then holstered his weapon. I won't kill you, Lorenzo said coldly. Death is too easy. You will live to see me take everything you own. Your business, your house, your name. You will die a pauper in the street. He turned and walked back to Emma. The silence that followed was heavy with the smell of gunpowder and the sea. Leo looked up at Lorenzo, trembling. Thank you, I knew you would come. Lorenzo looked down at Leo with utter contempt. I did not come for you, I came for her. He pulled a thick envelope from his jacket and threw it at Leo's feet. That is enough money to get to America. Go. If I ever see your face in Italy again, I will finish what I started tonight. Leo didn't hesitate. He grabbed the money and ran, vanishing into the fog without a backward glance at the sister who had almost died for him. Emma watched him go, a singular tear tracking down her cheek. Then she felt Lorenzo's hand on her waist. She turned into him, burying her face in his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, tight and unyielding. He is gone, Lorenzo murmured into her hair. The debt is paid. I have no home to go back to, Emma said, looking up at him. He was my only family. You have a home, Lorenzo said, wiping the tear from her face with his thumb. And you have a family now, a family of 2 if you want it. 6 months later, the bakery in the village reopened. The sign was new, gold lettering on black wood, Reed and DeLuca. It was bustling, filled with the scent of fresh rosemary focaccia and sweet pastries. Emma wiped flour from her hands as the bell above the door chimed. Lorenzo walked in. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore a simple button-down shirt and slacks, looking less like a king of the underworld and more like a man who had found peace. He walked behind the counter, ignoring the customers, and kissed her, a deep, lingering kiss that promised forever. Ready to go home? He asked. Not yet, Emma smiled, handing him an apron. We have a rush, start kneading. The Mafia boss, the most feared man in Naples, took the apron and tied it around his waist. He looked at the woman who had brought him to his knees, not with a bullet, but with a love he never thought he deserved. Yes, boss, he said, and for the first time in his life he meant it.